Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into another episode of the Money Insights Podcast, where we talk all things money and business. Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Allen, and I'm here with my co-host. You all know him as Rodney the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's up, man?
Hey, I am doing great. And I'm actually really excited about this time of year. Do you know what this time of year is?
Summer. It's super hot. Don't they call it the dog days of summer?
Yes, and it builds up to football season.
Okay, I was going to say there's no
It's coming.
sports out there. So to me, it's like the painful season
It
as
is.
it relates
It
to
is.
sports.
But we have to have something to look forward to. And so football's coming.
Okay, so good news. If you're a local guy, or a local person, I should say, then there's all sorts of kind of ups and downs as it relates to the Jazz. So we have like the Jazz, and we have this like football realignment stuff happening. So like there's all sorts of stuff in the news to kind of get us through the dog days of summer if you're a sports person.
Absolutely.
But it's been a little painful at the Jazz front. Rod, they're tearing it down. It's weird. They're tearing it down. Well, we don't know what they're doing, but most people here don't care much about the Jazz. So we'll leave that for another day. We'll leave that, Rod, for our sports podcast. How about that?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Today, Rodney, we are going to do part 2 of Dave's myth busting. We're going to do part 2 where we myth bust Dave's myths.
Yes.
Busting
them up. We're going to bust up his myth busting.
Gosh, that's a tongue twister. I'm struggling with it. Anyway, but what we're going to do, just as a reminder, I was given this very thoughtful gift, the Total Money Makeover right here. And it was a wedding present. Turns out Rod had the very same one given to him years before. And so I just was flipping through the pages and I was talking to my fiance at the time, Heather, who's now my wife. Heather was like, oh man, you should just like go through and bust some of the myth busts. And I was like, you know what? We should. That sounds fun.
Yes,
and
brilliant.
It was really easy for me to get excited and passionate about it. Okay. So with that context, Rod, today we are going to start off by talking about some of the myths that he brings up, or his myths around debt and mortgages. So like home debt specifically. We're not going to be talking about like all the other kinds of debt out there, primarily just his view on debt as it relates to your home. Okay.
Yes.
That's going to be our first part. Then from there, we're going to talk about Dave's beliefs on the market and just his kind of commonly held belief that the market always performs at about 12%. So put your money in mutual funds and you'll be good to go.
Yep.
And then finally, Rod, we get to our subject, which, you know, we're extra passionate about. And we're going to talk about why Dave thinks that life insurance is the worst financial product a person can buy. Does that sound fun?
I am excited. Yes.
I'm super excited.
Bring it
on. So for a little bit of context, I want to read a line that Dave says at the very beginning of his Money Myths chapter. And he says, the myths in this chapter are rooted in 2 basic problems. Okay, so the first one is risk denial, thinking total safety is possible and likely. Okay, the second is easy wealth, or looking for the magic key to open the treasure chest. So basically, he's calling them 2 things: risk denial and quick, easy money. So as we go through the myth busts that we're about to bust, we can kind of categorize them and use Dave's own system, I guess, for determining where they fit. I just thought it would be kind of a fun context for what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, Rod, without further ado, let's jump into Dave's myths. So, myth number 1, it is wise to borrow all I can on my home because of great interest rates. Then I can use the money, I can invest the money. So let me try that again. It's wise to borrow all I can on my home because of great interest rates. Then I can invest the money. And then his truth is, you really don't make anything when the smoke clears. Okay, so what's he saying here, Rod? Like, cut through the wordiness and tell us, what is Dave getting at when he says this is a bad idea?
Okay, first I'm going to go back to the two things, risk denial or quick easy money. And
Okay.
I think it could be both, but I'm going to lean more toward the quick easy money side, because he's saying if you think you're going to pay low interest rates on your mortgage and then and therefore have like a longer mortgage, we'll get into this kind of 30-year versus 15-year adjusted rate versus fixed rate, etc. We'll get into all these things.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to get just the better interest rate so you can have more money to go out and invest, you're just dreaming things up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So what's really interesting, Rod, is he gives in his soliloquy about this, he gives an example of an 8% mortgage, and then of course he uses his regular 12% return, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is, like, no one's paid 8% on a mortgage in 15 years, right?
True. Yep.
So
At
at
least.
least that. And by his own logic, the market always gets 12%. So what he does is he goes through and he says, well, if you take out like potential capital gains taxes, you really don't get ahead at all. But that's because he's in that example saying that you pay 8% on your mortgage and you get 12%. Now, we might think that both of those are a little bit off, but it's just interesting, the logic there, especially when you consider that his own belief is that you can return 12. And again, in the last 20 years, no one's paid more than 6%. So like the spread has been pretty significant.
Right. And I have to think about like the capital avalanche strategy that we teach, where we use a 2% spread as our kind of baseline in our assumptions, which is very conservative.
Yep.
And that 2% turns into a huge difference over time. If you can earn or pay 2% less than on the debt that in this case he's saying we're using so that we can have more to invest, and you can just earn 2% more than that, you've done amazing things. And a lot of the people we work with are doing a lot better than that, right?
Well, and again, it doesn't take a lot, and you do it over a long period of time, and it's massive. So really what he's saying is he does not really believe in financial arbitrage. Like, that's kind of what he's saying here, right?
I think there's probably some truth to that, but I would think even more if you just go back to the core of what he's saying and really just about everything, he doesn't believe in human nature, human discipline.
And I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah, because he's saying, which I think you and I both have talked with people who speak like this. Oh, I'm paying lower interest so that I can go out and invest, but then they don't invest. They just spend more money on the day-to-day things. So is there some truth to kind of what he's seen? Like, has he seen people who are doing this? Yes. But again, to say that applies equally to everybody, because if those two people over there don't have the discipline, then nobody can have the discipline. And so everybody should live by these rules of just, don't ever use debt for anything.
Okay. So good context, Rod. He says on page 171, with the drop in real estate values and the slowing market in 2008 and 9, the 2008 and 9 recession, many people lost their homes to foreclosure. I have done in-depth, detailed research and have found that 100% of the foreclosed homes had a mortgage.
Okay. All right.
Good logic,
Seems
Dave.
Seems fair.
Sadly, some of the people who lost their homes had a naive financial planner who left risk out of his formula and suggested they harvest their equity. Like I said earlier, when the tide goes out, you can tell who was skinny dipping. Okay, so the reason, and I could keep going on, the reason I bring that up is because in my mind, Dave does this everywhere throughout the book. Like, you'd have to be, okay, I'm going to offend people now. You'd have to be a drone to actually think this is good logic, right? Because basically what he's saying is because some people have made bad decisions with bad financial decisions, you will make bad financial decisions, even if you're using good logic and math. So he's like, don't use logic and math, because there were other people who may have done it this way, or I should say they didn't do it that way, who may have failed to do it this way. Therefore, you're going to fail to do it this way.
Yeah.
And that's really the basis of like all of his myths. They're not actually based in fact, logic, or education. They're based in he's seen people that have had bad experiences. Therefore, you will have a bad experience.
And are there bad advisors out there? Of course. Unfortunately, it's true. Are there people who are making bad decisions? Yes, of course. But I thought you made a really good point before we started recording, and that was he assumes people can't become educated. They can't learn and then live by logic
and build skills. Nope.
Right.
Nope. You just take thinking out of the equation, do it the way he says. Logic is just not important to him. And again, you'll find it throughout basically all of these points. But we could go on and on about that, Brad. Okay, let's get to myth number 2, which is still focused on mortgages. Okay, myth number 2, he says, take out a 30-year mortgage and promise to pay it like a 15-year. So if something goes wrong, you have wiggle room. That's the myth. Okay, the truth is something will go wrong. Good. Powerful stuff, Dave. I'm just kidding. Again, like I don't even know if there's much to say there other than Dave's suggesting that your things will go or that you'll create something that goes wrong. He'll suggest that you can't be disciplined enough to do it, and therefore the logic is out of the question.
You'll always take advantage of the wiggle room.
Right.
Because you'll always need it.
Which again, I know many people who have accelerated their mortgage in a really powerful way by doing it this way. Okay, so let's get into like the logic behind the actual concept here, Rod.
Okay.
Because there is some, there might be some. You could potentially sway somebody either direction, right? Some people really love the idea of getting the 15-year mortgage and just being disciplined and doing it that way. Some people really love the idea of getting a longer term, creating less pressure, but then accelerating it by putting extra money toward it.
Yep.
What's your thought as a financial expert on that specific topic?
Okay, I have a few thoughts. First of all, I actually, going back to the myth number 1, I actually think having a low rate on my mortgage and going out and investing.
Oh, don't
works.
say that.
It
oh
works.
My goodness.
And okay, so is it horrible to pay extra toward my mortgage? Of course not. It's an emotional thing for a lot of people. And so if it just makes you feel better to do that, awesome, go for it. Right. We also had a few weeks ago on our show, Adam Carroll, who uses the shred method, a way to accelerate paying off your mortgage
using
debt,
the bad word,
so that you can go and invest. I know.
It's crazy.
It's horrible.
That's a bad word. That's a very bad word. But yeah, we're actually suggesting in that episode, Adam's suggesting in that episode, that you can utilize debt to accelerate your debt payoff. It's crazy, right?
Yep.
But here's the crazy part. The math in these things actually works. So if you do them, they will indeed work.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm with you. And especially in today's day, like, I mean, I say today interest rates have started to go up, but like it's pretty reasonable, especially in the alternative space, to go get a double-digit return with relatively low risk, right? I can go get a hard asset that, has very little potential of losing money, especially over a long period of time, and very likely will do, much better than a 5 or 10% return. So now you have this situation where, like you're suggesting, you're actually generating quite a large spread between the two. Yeah. So if the spread on an individual basis was 1% or 2%, like you might be able to argue in that given scenario that's not very structured and calculated because it's a person just doing it on their own, right? Like you could argue that might be, a questionable decision. But it's hard to argue that as a questionable decision when I could get a spread of 10 or 15%, right?
Right.
Like, and that's very reasonable. And someone who's sophisticated, wise, even someone who's conservative could absolutely utilize that and really all they would need to do is just make sure that they have liquid money available in other spots. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
it's really not a matter of, it goes back to the same thing. The logic, the math, it all makes sense and it works. It's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to your two two basic problems, I think this one is risk denial. And the reason I say that is because I think what he's assuming is that people won't calculate the risks when they make decisions. They'll just, if they did the 30 year instead of the 15 years, so they have wiggle room, they'll just always use that wiggle room. And whether it's to go out and invest or whether it's to just spend on, going out to eat or whatever, people aren't smart enough to calculate the risk or understand the risk and make a calculated decision based on that.
Well, so the other thing here, Rod, is that you might argue that it's actually riskier to use a 15-year mortgage than to use a 30.
There could be. Yeah.
Right?
A lot of
now,
situations.
obviously, if you have liquid money, then you're okay in either situation.
Yep.
But let's just say you've eaten through that and now you've got a higher payment that you're having to deal with. Whereas if you didn't, let's say you lost your job or something difficult happened, you'd certainly in that moment wish that you had the 30-year mortgage that created some wiggle room, right?
Yep.
So again, it's not just what you suggested, the behavioral part. The logical part also suggests that what he's saying might just be a bad idea. Okay. Rod, what is myth number 3?
Okay, myth number 3 says it's wise to use a lower mortgage interest rate offered by an ARM or an adjustable rate mortgage if you know you'll be moving in a few years anyway. That's his myth.
Okay.
His truth is you will be moving when they foreclose.
Sorry, I was reading it, started laughing before. So the only option is that you're going to be So basically, if what I'm reading is true, Dave's suggesting that getting an ARM means you'll be likely foreclosing.
Yep.
Okay. Game, set, match, Dave.
This is an interesting one.
Okay, talk
because
about it.
when we bought our first home, we decided to get a 7-year ARM. And we were told, we had people tell us, hey, this is not a good idea.
Okay.
And I won't say I knew then what I know now, right? I was 26 years old or whatever. And so I won't pretend like I was making, I knew everything was making the best decision. But I'll tell you this, we were only in the house for 2 years. And then we were.
So you've at least, you didn't wait. So what you're saying is you were in the house for a year and, 6 or 7 months before you weren't able to make payments anymore. And then by 2 years, they'd kicked you out of the house. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, we decided to build a new home and went and got an ARM on that one.
Okay. So what Dave's suggesting then is that, I think we at least busted this idea that you'll definitely be filing for bankruptcy or foreclosing or whatever, right?
Yeah, maybe I just escaped that, but
okay. So here's the deal. I have seen a lot of situations where people overextended themselves, especially in those early, when I was early in the business, it was very common for me to see people who were paying, had a big old mortgage and it was an ARM and then they were 2 years away. But once that time came, they were going to have a jump in their mortgage that they weren't going to be able to handle. Right. So the concept that Dave's saying there isn't that we shouldn't be considering the fact that in a situation like a 7-year ARM, our interest rate could go up and therefore our payment is going to go up. Like we do want to be considering that. But again, if the plan is to live there for 2 or 3 years, then and likely move before 7 years, then that's totally reasonable. Because here's the deal. If you're there 5 or 6 years, guess what? You can still go and refi it at that point in time. Hey, sorry for the interruption. Just wanted to let you know that you can take the F3 assessment right now over at moneyinsights.net. And after the short 5-minute assessment, you'll get specific recommendations that will help you move from high income to high net worth. Enjoy the rest of the show. Right. So anyway, I don't know that I have like a strong opinion on whether someone should use an ARM or not. I just know that using good logic is the way to make financial decisions rather than trying to say this is the hard and fast rule because Dave says so.
And in the example you gave, if you chose that and now you're 2 years away from it and you see this coming, you don't just have to wait and just hope.
No, that's it.
Right?
That's it. You can be proactive.
You continue to make good decisions, even if that means you have to move.
Right.
You're thinking ahead and you're not just waiting until it happens and then hope, right? I hope I get a raise so I can, pay the higher mortgage when it comes,
And again, like it's sad when people have made decisions that like these that have created problems for themselves. But again, it's a situation where it's not the vehicle that's the problem, it's human behavior that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? But human behavior is also the solution. Yeah. Imagine that.
Well said.
Okay. So myth number 4, Rod, you can't pay cash for a home.
That's a myth.
Here's the truth. Bet me.
I love stuff like that. Like,
yeah, those are good.
When there's it's not logic. It's just a statement. It's like, okay, I know people who have bought their homes with cash. So
therefore you can and should be able to buy your home in cash. Everyone. Okay. So this is ridiculous. Like I think about when I was coming, 21, 22, I'm kind of getting through this college stage and got married young. I was 22 when I got married, and it was in 2006.
Okay.
Home prices are skyrocketing. The sentiment that people were telling me is that you've got to get in a home ASAP, because if not, then you'll like never be able to.
Yeah.
Right. Like really good logic from and sadly, these are like, people that I thought could give me good advice, but generally did. So, but my point here is just that there was no way I was going to get in a home before. Would have taken an awfully long time. Even Rod. Okay, so this is going to sound really like I'm going to kind of brag here for a second, but our business generates multi-million dollars, and even as successful as we've been able to be, it still would have been, only a handful of years ago that I could have just bought a decent home in cash.
Yeah.
So anyway, to me, it's just ludicrous to suggest or like try to make people feel like the way that you need to do it is to buy it in cash. If you're able to do it, awesome. Like good for you. If that feels good, makes sense to you, then great. But to like make people potentially feel bad because they're not buying it in cash or feel like they should be able to buy it in cash, I just think it's ridiculous. It's not even living in, reality.
I have one thing to say to that.
Bet me. Okay, I'm going to bet you. How much? How much are we going to bet, Rod?
Everybody can buy a home in cash.
Okay, Rodney, we're almost through the debt ones. We're going to do one more debt one, and then we're going to move into some other fun stuff. Okay, myth number 5. The debit card has more risk than a credit card. I didn't even know that he said this. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The debit card has more risk than a credit card, and the truth is nope. Okay,
nope.
Tell us what you think, Rod.
I don't carry a debit card. I only carry credit cards. Dave,
shame on you, and shame on you.
Punch me in the face because
he would yell at you. I don't know if he likes you at a physical violence, but he would yell.
That's probably
he would yell.
And because he would assume, well, that means you carry a balance every month, right? Here's a newsflash. I don't. We don't carry a balance ever.
Dave says that you can't do that. Dave says that most people carry balances, therefore you will carry a balance.
Okay, so I have a story for you.
Okay.
I was carrying a credit card. I must have
Did I have a balance?
No.
I'm just kidding.
I probably walked past someone who had one of those scanners that can pick up all your information and then go and use it. So all of a sudden I see that someone in South Jordan, by the way, South Jordan Walmart, went and bought a TV and some other stuff using my credit card.
I should have let you know beforehand that I was doing that, Rod. Just kidding. That's not happening.
So what's interesting is I was able to reach out to the credit card company and tell them, hey, this was not my purchase. They relieved me of having to pay for that. And Walmart had to fit the bill, right? Because they accepted a fraudulent purchase. Now, do I think that's great and fair? Of course not. Some thief out there got a TV and Walmart had to pay for it, right?
Right.
So that's
right.
not.
We don't
that's
want
not
that.
great. But had it been a debit card, it's all on me. So
that's interesting.
If he's saying the myth is the debit card has more risk than a credit card, I'm saying there's no myth to that. The debit card, carrying a debit card has more risk than carrying a credit card. If I lost it, someone used it, again, credit card, I could deny the charges. I could say that wasn't mine. Debit card, it's too bad. My money's already gone. There's nothing I can do about it.
So what he's suggesting, though, Rod, isn't like a risk of money being stolen. He's suggesting the risk is that you will overspend.
I will not pay off my balance every month.
Yeah, well, and worse, Rod, if you have a debit card, it'll decline it once you've got no money there.
Yeah.
Right? But a credit card, you can have a balance. You don't have to have the money in order to do it. So what he's suggesting is if you have a credit card, you're going to use it. You just have, because that's what people do, right? People carry credit card balances. They make bad decisions, therefore you will. And to make matters worse, you're not even going to pay it off at the end of the month.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Okay, Rod. So that's Dave's basic philosophy around debt as it relates to home and mortgage. Okay. Are we done with that? Do you feel like we've hit that hard enough?
Let's talk about the basic problems.
Oh my gosh.
And how it relates to these.
Yeah, I keep missing it. So, okay, so we already did it for number 1 and 2, right?
Yep.
Okay, so number 3, where we said it's wise to use a lower mortgage interest rate offered by an ARM if you know you'll be moving in a few years anyway. What's the truth is you will be moving when they foreclose. Okay, so where does that fit, Rod? Is that risk denial?
It must be risk denial. I think he's saying people don't understand or they're denying that there's risk in taking on an ARM.
Okay. There's no quick, easy money on that. I mean, you might say that you're saving quick, easy money, right? Okay, but I think you're right. I think you're right on it. Okay, so myth number 4, you can't pay cash for a home, Rod. Quick, easy money or risk denial?
I'm going to go with quick, easy money.
Help me understand.
If I don't want to wait to buy the home. I want to go get the easy money through the loan.
Okay. Yes, you're right.
Instead of waiting to save it all up.
And you might also say that, carrying significant risk. So maybe all of his are like, that's what they. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
And then on the debit card and the credit card, I mean, it could be both again. If based on his assumption that I'm carrying a balance, and if I use the credit card, I'm not going to pay it off, then of course that's quick, easy money, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay. So now to be clear, we're just defining where Dave's putting these. These are not obviously the way we feel about this, because we would say most of these things are just good, logical, financial decisions that make sense. Okay.
For smart people who make wise decisions, become educated.
Educated decisions. You can make educated decisions and get much further at really. And this is what's painful about this, Rod. What he's doing is harming a lot of people, in the sense that he's giving people a way to get to a place, but he's not teaching them that there's like 6 better ways to get there. Yeah. He's again saying people make mistakes when they learn about this stuff. So don't learn about it. Just do this. But what's really painful is it's robbing these people. And can I just say it? Like, it's generally the low to medium income people, right? Who are kind of the Ramseyites. It's robbing them of the opportunity to get ahead by making good, solid financial decisions that would get them ahead, like using conservative leverage for financial arbitrage. Like that's a could create a huge benefit to people if they just knew and understood it. And yet you've got people like Dave saying, nope, this is stupid. Stay away from it. Yeah. Drives me crazy. Okay. Rod, so we're going to talk a little bit about the market. Now, this isn't actually a myth inside the book, but I just felt like it's such a important part of Dave's philosophy that like we had to talk about it, right?
Because we're going to myth bust his truth.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So Dave's truth, anyone that knows Dave, whether they've heard him on the radio or read the book, they know that Dave always assumes and suggests that the market gets about a 12% return. So that's his truth. The market gets 12%. Rod, where do we start? You go first.
Oh, I'll start with the concept of average versus actual, and then you apply it. Okay, is that fair?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so obviously he's talking about an average of 12%. He's not saying you get a 12% return from the market every year, right?
Right.
I think
right. That's not what he's saying, and that's okay, right? So he's just saying if you took a 50-year time frame or a 100-year time frame or whatever time frame you want to take, then the market generally gets about 12% overall. There's going to be highs and lows, but if you just took the math over that, if you took 50 years and did the math on it, you would get an average return of 12%.
Yep. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is talk about what's the difference between stating an average return versus what you actually got at the end of the day.
Okay, wait. So you're saying that's not the same thing?
It's not.
Okay, this is important. Okay, let's just think about this for a second. So what you're suggesting is an average return, and we state averages all the time, but what we're suggesting is there is actually a definitive difference between what they're stating as an average and what I could get in my pocket. Like, I think that's really important. A lot of people don't think about that or don't realize it. Okay, keep going.
So, and I'll just use some really easy math just to make it simple.
Okay, perfect.
So let's go off of averages. Okay, so let's say over a 2-year time frame, let's say it's 2007 and then 2008. Okay. In 2007, let's say I started with $100,000 and I got a 20% return. Okay. So now I have $120,000.
Okay, good. That's a good return, by the way. Solid.
Yeah. The next year I lost 40%.
Okay.
So I lost $48,000 off of
Okay.
so 120, 40% of that, I lost $48,000. Okay. So now I'm at what, 172 or sorry, 72. I started at 100,
72.
Went to 120. Now I'm at 72.
Okay. I'm still with you.
If you take the average of those two, then gained 20, lost 40. It's an average of a negative 20 divided by 2 years, average of a negative 10% return.
Negative 10%. Okay. Yeah. So
where should that put me? It should put me right around 80.
Right. Maybe a little bit, like a little bit lower than 80.
78 to 80, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Where am I? I'm at 72. How did that happen?
Okay, that's significant because it changes. Here's the rule behind it. The downs hurt more than the ups help, right? Yeah. So, and especially if I lose money early on, it becomes more difficult to drive that return back up, right?
Right.
On an actual basis. I could drive it up really quickly on an average basis. Again, if we're using extremes in like 2 years, well, if in year one I've got $100,000 and I lose 50%, right? Lose my 50%. Now my 100,000 is 50,000. The next year, good news. I got 100% return. So I'm back up to my $100,000, but my average return is a whopping 50%. Did I do the right math on that?
25.
Okay. So I had a 25% return.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Thanks for correcting me. So I had a 50% return over the 2 years, but I should have had 150,000 if that was the case. And yet I'm stuck with the $100,000,
right at the 100
that I started with. Okay. I think people get the point, right? The idea here is that there's a lot of things that are happening inside the market. So to just state like, hey, average return, like it's not putting in reality. It's not considering things that are happening with that money.
Yeah, because the same financial advisors that he is recommending, and then he obviously he pokes fun at other financial advisors that aren't the people he's recommending, but when they go and they say, hey, Christian, what's your magic number for retirement? And then let's create a formula so that when you earn your 12% average every year between now and retirement age, then we'll know how much you have to save to get you there. So again, this all kind of may sound like we're just kind of nitpicking the way that he's defining it, but in his application toward being ready for financial independence, if we assume 12% every year, and especially when you get into retirement and you're spending some of that money, you're using some of that money every year.
It's just downright dangerous.
It's
downright dangerous.
It is.
Okay, so I want to bring up a quick study, Rod. Dalbar study.
Okay.
It's an interesting study. It basically, we're going to use a little bit of Dave's logic against him in this situation.
Okay.
So here's the deal. According to the Dalbar study, the S&P 500 over the last 30 years, and it's actually, I should state this, it's from the end of 2021 through 30 years before that, whatever that year is. 89? Okay, so 1989 through 2021. During that time frame, the S&P 500 returned 10.75%, 10.57%. Let me get that right. Inflation was 2.6%. And the average investor return, according to Dalbar, was 7.13%.
Whoa, wait a minute. You just said the S&P did 10.57.
I know. Crazy. Okay, so here's the deal. There are a lot of factors that go into what a person gets in a return. Like, there's no inclusion in that 12% of the fees that a person pays throughout that time frame, right? If you're paying 1.5%, then guess what? You're not getting 12% anymore. There's obviously inflation. Usually there's commissions and fees. Like, there's just a broad array of things that are impacting the return that make it really dangerous from my perspective to focus in so much just on that 12% number. Because if everybody just thinks and makes assumptions that they're getting 12%, like, that's, again, it's going to be dangerous. It just is.
Yeah. And there's the human emotion of it. And Dave would say, no, take the human emotion out because you just buy for the long term. But just buy it and hold it, keep it for the long term.
And we would say, Dave, people don't do that. Therefore, the market doesn't get 10.57%, right?
Yep.
It just doesn't. Okay, Rod, now that we've hammered the average versus actual conversation, we're going to jump into a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, okay? And here is the final myth that we're going to talk about. Here it is. Cash value life insurance, like whole life, will help me retire wealthy. Okay, so that's the myth. Dave says this is the truth. Cash value life insurance is one of the worst products available. Just period. Okay, Rod, I'm going to give you the first run at it. I've got lots of things to say, but I am excited to hear the thoughts on your mind.
Okay. As you can imagine, I've had a lot of time to think about this because it comes up regularly. And I mean, so I think the two points I want to make is, first of all, Dave's system is based off of the stock market, clearly, right? If you can go get 12% there, why do anything else?
Yeah.
Right. In fact, it's not that he has doesn't tell people to invest anywhere else, but he pretty much knocks on everything except investing in the stock market. Okay. Just straight up mutual funds, index funds, whatever. Right.
Yeah. Because everybody, Rod, is going to retire with no debt and a couple $1 million in their mutual funds, and you're good to go. So that's like Dave's plan.
They'll earn that 12% average return, which means they can live high on the hog.
Right? Yeah, you'll earn it going into retirement. You'll earn it to get there, but you'll also earn it once you get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if you save, in his example, I think he showed saving like $700,000. Mm-hmm. So if you save $700,000 and you get 12% return, right? That's $84,000 a year plus your Social Security. That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
So what Dave's suggesting is, and this again is just asinine and dangerous, suggesting that somebody could reasonably retire. Let's say that they had $150,000 income and now they want to retire with a nest egg of $700,000. Like, he would suggest that that's totally reasonable. Well, the studies that we look at are now taking out like 3.5, lower than 3.25, sometimes 2.8. Right. Like those are the withdrawal rates that people are talking about now. Meanwhile, he's over there saying, don't worry about it. 12%.
You get 12. Yeah. So again, it's a system. So this goes back to my first point.
Sorry.
It's a system.
Sorry for the tangent.
And because it's based on the market, if he's looking at whole life insurance or any other cash value life insurance, and he's saying, oh, the return you get in there, are you getting 12%, people? If you're not getting 12%, then it's not going to do anything for you, right? Yep. And okay, so that's my first point. Which my response to that first point is, obviously, the way that we use it, there are a lot of ways that we use it, and for the most part, we're not suggesting, hey, come and put money into whole life insurance because of the return that you'll get here. That's going to be satisfactory for you, right?
Right. We're not saying generally to build your wealth on life insurance returns
as the
nobody's
primary
suggesting
vehicle,
that.
Right?
Nope.
Okay.
And what he suggests is that everybody thinks that, right? Now, and again, it's not that life insurance doesn't have a place. Like, I know people that do really well, have done really well using kind of that index universal life as like one of their core retirement income vehicles. That's totally reasonable, right? So we're not suggesting it can't do that. But what we are suggesting is that the way that we teach it, right, the strategies that we teach are not suggesting ever that life insurance is the actual it in and of itself, life insurance by itself is going to be what creates the value proposition that we're looking for.
Yep. Okay, so that's the first kind of response for me. The second one is, it has more to do with just an understanding of how a life insurance policy can be built, because the type of life insurance policy that he's talking about, where there's no overfunding that's happening, there's no even attempt at optimizing the growth of the cash value inside of the policy.
And we know, Rod, that, sorry to cut you off, but this is important. We know that's what he's talking about because in the book, he gives an example and he says, in a whole life policy, you won't have any cash value for the first 3 years.
Yep.
And of course, we know that would be like, I don't know any policies that don't build any cash value for the first 3 years. That's an overstatement. But the point is it's clearly not one that has 80% cash in the first year, which makes a massive difference.
Right. So the whole life insurance policy that he's describing, I don't want either. So that's the kind of irony of it, that what he's describing isn't what we're doing clearly, and we wouldn't want it either. But again, to then therefore say all whole life or all cash value life insurance is worthless, it just is silly.
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating because, again, it's the same issue that I have with most of his stuff, right? It's telling people bad information that could actually be harmful, and maybe the better way to say it is it's taking away an opportunity for people to utilize really good financial concepts, strategies, and tools, but suggesting that because of the way that some people use them, they should be totally disregarded. That's what he does with a home equity line of credit, right? He calls them, I was reading the book, he calls them hells. He says that the banking industry calls them hells. So, but they've just left off the I or something like that. But it's kind of a funny dynamic that Dave is just always talking about. So you have to just kind of get used to the Dave methodology. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about life insurance, or is that all you have?
Well, I mean, clearly, without getting into all the details of the strategies that we use, clearly there are ways to use life insurance that are incredibly valuable, so that, interestingly, the strategy by itself, a lot of the people we talk to use it without considering the insurance part of it. That's the irony of it, right? We're building these really cool strategies off of the cash value. Oh, and by the way, it also provides a lot of really cool insurance that you don't have to pay for anyway. You don't have to go get the term insurance that he's suggesting you should have, because your insurance need is taken care of by the strategies we use. Now, I'm not saying nobody should have term, right? Because it depends on how much the policy is providing, because we're optimizing it for the cash value. We back into what the insurance number is going to be, minimizing, keeping it as low as possible to keep the costs low. But we absolutely believe in life insurance. People should have enough. And so adding some term to that, I have term insurance too. A lot of people assume that because we're cash value life insurance people, we're also anti-term, and that's not the case.
We're not cash value life insurance. We're just life insurance people in the sense that we like to use life insurance where it can create the most value in whatever form that makes sense.
Yep. Use the tool for the right need, accomplish the need, and you're good.
And that's the essence of what Dave doesn't do. He just basically disregards all the tools because they sometimes get misused. Drives me just absolutely bonkers. Okay, that's probably enough. I could go on a long tangent about life insurance and the values that I was thinking about. And maybe I'll say this really quick. Like, the only time that we used life insurance as the actual investment is with the capital avalanche, right? And even then, it's not the life insurance in and of itself. It's the life insurance plus the leverage that creates the return. And without the leverage, it would probably generate a 5 or 6% return instead of what we're suggesting, which is a double-digit return. So anyway, and then of course, when we talk about the investment optimizer, it's a complementary tool to build cash in a place we wouldn't otherwise. So anyway, Dave is just, again, missing out on some of the best strategies that people can use to get ahead if they would have just become educated enough to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Rodney. Well, that's fun. I don't know if we're going to do part 3. We might do a part 3. If we do, it'll probably be a debt snowball versus a shred method episode, because I think that could be fun. Yeah,
I like it. That's a good idea.
All right. Okay, Rodney, I think that is it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights Podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights Podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.